I'm Emily Epp, Manager of Communications at the Cariboo Regional District, joined once again by Natasha from the Cariboo Fire Center. This is today's video update for August the 31st. Before we get started into our fire update, I just wanted to let you know that the CRD's Emergency Operations Center will be open throughout the long weekend. Our public phone lines will be open from 10 to 2, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday we'll be back to our regular hours of 8:30 to 4:30. Also through the long weekend, we may not have fire update videos every day, but we will be doing them as situations come up and depending on the needs. So stay tuned for those updates through the weekend. And with that, Natasha, did you want to just touch a bit on the weather for us?
Sure. So the weather this weekend, really not a lot of change in the weather forecast from the forecast that we talked about a couple of days ago on one of these videos. We're still looking at slightly cooler temperatures today and Friday, but then getting into the weekend, we are expecting to see temperatures in the low 30s, and this is of course well above the seasonal averages for this time of year in the Cariboo. The good news is that winds are expected to be generally light getting into the weekend. We're still dealing with a bit of wind today. But once we get into the weekend, like I said, it should be light, and then into next week it's looking hot. So not a lot of relief in the weather forecast going ahead.
Thanks, Natasha. And do you want to just give us a bit of an overview of what we're seeing here in the Cariboo?
Sure. So before I get into sort of some weekend messaging, I'll just briefly mention the hectares and fires we've had, hectares burnt and fires we've seen so far in the Cariboo this year. We've had 269 fires that have burned approximately 950,000 hectares. So we are, as you know, getting close to 1 million hectares, which is quite a milestone if we do end up reaching it. I don't know if we will. To put this season into perspective with what we've seen in the last couple of seasons in the Cariboo, by this point last year we had only had 808 hectares burn, and in 2015 we had just under 10,000 hectares burned by this point. So really quite a unique year we're looking at this year.
Thanks, Natasha. And so as we look ahead to the long weekend coming up, what are some things that the people should know in the Cariboo?
So the current fire danger ratings we're seeing across the Cariboo are currently high to extreme. We are expecting to see some of those high areas move to extreme, given that they're not going to see precipitation and that they are experiencing hot and dry conditions. In a news release earlier today, just given the heightened wildfire risk in the Cariboo and in other southern parts of the province, the British Columbia government is recommending that people stay completely out of the backcountry in the Cariboo Fire Center and do not visit any recreation sites. In the Cariboo in particular, there are a number of restrictions given the severity of the fire season, the extremely dry conditions, and the number and size of fires we have in the Cariboo at the moment. I'll get into a little bit of the details on these restrictions, but full details for them can be found by going to gov.bc.ca/wildfire bans. So to start off, all open burning, including the use of campfires, is currently prohibited. And some other notable things to remember this weekend that are covered by this prohibition are the use of fireworks, the use of binary exploding targets, such as for target practice, and tiki torches, all prohibited currently in the Cariboo Fire Center. The off-road vehicle ban is still in place. That's in place for the Cariboo Fire Center as well as Kamloops and Southeast Fire Centers. Essentially, it means that the operation of any off-road vehicles on Crown use for recreation purposes is prohibited, and all on-highway vehicles must remain on designated road surfaces. And we did have a general backcountry ban earlier this summer in the Cariboo that was rescinded on August 23rd, but there is a series of area closures in place on current wildfires, some of the current wildfires we have in the Cariboo. And these area restrictions are in place to protect public safety and allow our fire suppression operations to continue effectively. And I know we've talked about this before, but public interference with fire suppression efforts basically compromises the safety of the public, interfering as well as our first responders, and hinders firefighting operations. And lastly, I know that probably a lot of folks will be out using bodies of water. If you are, boating, swimming, otherwise recreating on a body of water, we do ask that you keep an eye out for any aircraft that may be needing to use the lakes to support firefighting operations. Please stay well clear of them and keep an eye on what they're doing. Sometimes if the wind shifts in the area, they'll have to use a different approach or departure pattern. So It's really important to keep an eye on any aircraft in the area and stay out of their way and let them work safely.
Thanks for that update, Natasha. And I guess to summarize all of that, the main message for the long weekend, and as it is in all of these situations throughout the summer, is just making sure that you know before you go. So making sure you're checking the appropriate websites for restrictions and closures and those kinds of things, so that you're aware of the situation before you come or use different areas of the region.
Yeah, and lastly, before we say goodbye for today, we do rely on the public's help for detecting fires, and we will be asking for your help this weekend to report any fire or smoke that you may see by calling 1-800-663-5555. And if you are reporting a fire, it's just to note, it's a big help for us if you have a good idea of where you are and where the fire is, as well as how big you estimate the fire to be and what kind of smoke you're seeing. All that information does help us in our response.
Thanks, Natasha. And like we said, make sure you know before you go. If you're looking for information on the current restrictions from the BC Wildfire Service, that's gov.bc.ca/wildfire bans. If you're looking to know what recreation sites and trails are open in the region, please visit sitesandtrailsbc.ca. As well, if you're looking for BC Parks closure information, make sure to check out their website as well. And as always, the Cariboo Regional District website, cariboord.ca, has up-to-date information on evacuation orders and alerts. So thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more updates throughout the long weekend.